Okay, we got you now, right?
Yep.
Okay. And we got about 18 seconds left, and you will be live, and I will cue you.
Okay.
And we're just about there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can begin now.
All right. Well, this is Glenn Winningham, and what we're going to talk about today is about do you know who you are? Recently, I was visited by it's about a year ago now, I was visited by the Texas State Police and the FBI, and they told me during that visit 3 times, quite frankly. I was sitting there the third time, I was sitting there thinking, okay, you told me this twice before. Anyways, they told me 3 times that I'm listed as sovereign in their system. And so what we're going to talk about, and you know, if anybody has any questions, please let us know. But we're going to talk about how I did that, and what's happening, and how anybody can do it, because really we're all sovereign. And what has happened is the government has passed laws that really don't apply to anybody because they're bankrupt. They're owned by their creditors, who are the international bankster thieves, and so they have a duty to try and make money for them. And so they pass laws. They have an oath of office, so they know it, and so they pass laws that really don't apply to anybody. And if we get ourselves mixed up in them, then the way the courts view it is we breed it, and we're supposed to know the law, and so we've agreed to it. And so once you understand the law and how the law works, then it's easily defeated. But that's what you have to do. You have to go on the attack. A good example is, for example, a birth certificate. There's no law that says that anybody has to go and register the births of their children. It says that if you read that law, every state, I've read them, they all say that all persons have to do that. Well, I can show you court cases and all sorts of stuff that says that a person is a fictitious entity. Matter of fact, even in their statutes, it says that a person is a fictitious entity. And so, and if you're a corporation, well, then you better go down there and register your births and do all the rest of that stuff. But me, I'm flesh and blood. I have blood and blowing through my veins and all that, and so therefore I'm not a person. And I go into the courts and I tell them this all the time. I've been to the Supreme Court 3 times. So anyways, once you understand the law, and it's actually one of the reasons I like doing this, quite frankly, is because once you, it's easy to go into their statutes, and in about 10 minutes, I can go into their statutes and find why it doesn't apply to me, and then that's all I need to know, because none of the rest of the stuff applies. I don't have to worry about jumping through their hoops or doing this or doing that. And under Title 18, United States Code, Section 241 and 242, it's a felony to violate someone's rights under the color of law, and so they're very careful about how they do these statutes, and there's certain things that have to happen to make a statute a valid, lawful law. And in other words, all statutes have to have a preamble. There's certain things that have to be there to make that a lawful statute. Another thing is that it has to be read 3 times in the legislature, and then it has to be signed by the governor or the president or whoever that is the head of the local governmental authority. And what happens is that the president, okay, or the governor, he knows the law, and it's his job to make sure that all that stuff, that the stuff that he signs is a valid law. Otherwise, he won't sign it. And now he might not sign it for other reasons too, but he certainly won't sign it because that's perjury of oath. If that law doesn't have everything that is required for it to be a valid statute, and he signs it, that's perjury of oath. Okay, that's felony. Okay, and that gets him in jail. And so he won't sign it. And so what happens is that the way you can find out if they're positive law or not, at least in the federal level, is you go into the Office of Law Revision Counsel. And that's a website. That's a U.S. Congress website. And they'll tell you what titles of the United States Code are positive law. Did you know Title 26 is not positive law? That's right. Title 26, the Income Tax Act. It doesn't exist. There is no Income Tax Act. And so that's the argument. What are you talking to me for? There's no Income Tax Act. And there is no Social Security Act. That's true, too. Title 42 is one that part of it's positive law and part of it's not. Okay, and if you look in the Office of Law Revision Counsel, actually it's also in the front of every United States Code book too, in a law library. But the Social Security Act is not positive law. Okay, so what we're talking about is what positive law. If you look it up in a law dictionary, positive law is law that was properly enacted. Okay, and properly enacted is the operative word. And so if the law has not been properly enacted, then it's not a law. And so there is no Social Security Act, there is no Customs Act, there is no Immigration Act, there is no Income Tax Act, there is no Homeland Security Act, there is no Patriot Act. Okay, all these hot buttons that people are getting going all ballistic over about the government going and doing these things. There is no act. Okay, they don't have the authority to do anything under those acts. And so once you understand that, it's easily defeated. And so what I do is I send out a registered letter to like the chief judge, the chief prosecutor, the chief of police, county sheriff, in every city, county, to the attorney general in every state that I travel in. And I travel quite a bit, so I spent literally tens of thousands of dollars doing this stuff. Anyways, so I sent them out a letter, and it started out about 8 pages, and now it's at the point that it's like about 20. But and it's got a bunch of court citations in it and stuff like that. And in my letter, I tell them, you have no more authority. Oh, I'm going to be traveling in your state or your county or your city, and I don't have a driver's license. And your statute doesn't require me to have a driver's license. And here's why. And then it also says you have no more authority to over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop. And it says, I also tell them that I have the right to resist an unlawful arrest with lethal force if necessary. Now, you have to be careful with that because you can get yourself in trouble. Matter of fact, I deliberately do not carry guns with me because of the fact that I don't want my gun to become an issue if the cops do stop me. But they don't stop me, quite frankly. And I can't tell you how many times. A good example is one time I was traveling in New York, and I don't know how many have been in New York, but there's a Palisades Parkway, and that speed limit on that Palisades Parkway is 55, and I was, really just going the speed of the rest of the traffic, but I was the guy out front of the pack, Anyways, I was doing 85 and a 55, and I come around this corner, and there's a highway patrol there, and I had previously sent one of my notices to the superintendent of the highway patrol, and I come around this corner, there's a highway patrol there, and this cherries come on, and I took my foot off the gas, and I slowed down, but I never hit the brake. And I slowed down to 55, and I kept on going, and he never came after me. And there's other times, I was doing, another time, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was doing 80. I had my cruise set. I was going to work, and there was like one car on the road, and he was next to me. He was in the slow lane, I was in the fast lane. I was just inching past him, and I had my cruise set. The speed limit was 65 in this area, and I was doing 80, and I was just inching past this guy, and this car comes ripping up behind me, and he got so close to me that his headlights disappeared behind my tailgate. And and I just left my cruise set, and I just inched past this guy and got out in front where it was safe and pulled over into the slow lane, and then this car took off, and it was a cop. And he didn't have his cherries going or anything, and I was kind of surprised. But the point is I can't tell you how many times that happens. It's not like I try and break their laws. Matter of fact, one of the things that when the FBI and the state police came to see me, they actually said, you think you don't have to follow our code's rules and regulations? And I said, well, yes, you're right. I said, but what I do is I teach people that they have to live a higher law. And that higher law says that even though you don't have to follow those codes, rules, and regulations, you should follow them because you choose to, because you respect the people in the area and you don't want to cause injury to anybody. Because you cannot demand common law remedies without accepting common law responsibilities. And common law responsibilities, the common law is very severe. And in other words, if I go through a stop sign at common law, stop sign at common law is really a yield sign. And so if I go through a stop sign at common law and nobody's injured, then there's nothing anybody can do. But if I go through a stop sign at common law and I hit some guy and kill him, and he's got a wife and children, then I have to pay to support his wife for the rest of her life, and I have to pay. There's no jails at common law, okay? I have to pay to support his children till they're the age of majority, okay? And the choice is either I do that or they take me out back and stone me, okay? That's the choice. So you know, if you're gonna demand common law remedies, then you have to accept common law responsibility. And this is what I told them, and they kind of like that. And so, you know, they asked me, you know, actually we talked for a good half hour or 45 minutes about a lot of things, and when we were done talking, we shook hands, and I told them that I appreciated the work they do, and I do tell that to all the cops, quite frankly, that I don't want you to take this personal. You know, I have to assert my rights. I appreciate the work you do. And I have no idea what they pay you. We need people to hunt down murderers and thieves and those kinds of people. And so I don't have any idea what they pay you. In my opinion, is not enough. But I have to assert my rights. And so I always try and remember to tell the cops that kind of stuff. And so because we do need them. And at common law, you know, they perform a very valuable service. At common law, what they do is it comes down to the posse, right? Okay, if you think about it, and with the posse, the sheriff can basically conscript anybody that he needs to come and help him go and chase after some criminal. And if it takes 2 or 3 days, then it takes 2 or 3 days. And you have to drop everything and you have to go and help the sheriff. And that's your duty at common law. And so these guys are doing it. The government's paying for it, and I don't have to go out and help them chase down criminals. So I appreciate the work they do. You know, so you know, we all need to keep things in perspective, and you know, a lot of us sit there and claim, you know, common law remedies, but they're not willing to accept common law responsibility, and it's a two-edged sword. Okay, you got to accept common law responsibility as well. Anyways, is there anybody that's got any questions about anything we've talked about so far?
Not so far. There's been some topic in the chat, but I do have a phone number that I would like to give out to anyone listening who would like to call in, and that would be 785-336-5190, or you can join us for a little while on the TCT -calls on Skype. That's TCT-CALLS, and you can join us. We can either put you on air to ask the question, or you can put your comment or question in the chat, and we will put you on there. We'll get it out to Glenn so he can answer it for you. So go ahead, Glenn.
All right. Thank you very much. Anyways, once you know who you are, and this is basically what my notice does, is that I send them a notice, and you know, the courts have ruled that the people are sovereign, and that's true. As a matter of fact, all the rights of the king. At the Revolution, all the rights of the king devolved onto the people, and I can show you court cases that talk about this all day. And the only power of the government is power that's delegated, okay? And if I have, you got to think about power that's delegated. If I delegate power, well, I can take it back. I'm the king, and when I delegate power, I can still exercise that power myself. There's nothing stopping me from exercising that power. All I'm doing when I delegate it is I'm giving someone else permission to do it on my behalf. That's all. And I've actually seen old court cases, like the 1700s, where the court said that you can't sue the government because the people are the government, and it's like suing yourself. It's impossible. But yet now, what's happened is that you can sue the government all day long. And the reason is because the government is not sure anymore. It's de facto. It's bankrupt. It's been bankrupt at least 3 times. The federal government has. And if you go to Dun & Bradstreet's website and do a search for United States of America in the District of Columbia, you'll come up with the United States of America 4, the number 4 court. And that means the first 3 were liquidated in bankruptcy, and we're on number 4. So it's not, we have lost control over our government. Now, the government officials are still our public servants because they still have an oath of office, and that's our trump card. And but we have to keep ourselves out of what the courts view to be contracts, because if you get injured somehow, who are you going to go to get a remedy? You're going to have to go to the courts. And if you want the courts to give you a remedy, then you have to have clean hands. And you have to show them that you didn't, there's no contract here, and you've been trying to assert your rights, and they still went ahead and violated your rights. And because if they go in there and they show that you've got this driver's license and you haven't given them notice about anything, and first of all, everything's under martial law because the government's bankrupt, so they work on presumption. And so they presume everything. And so the burden's on you to defeat their presumptions is really what it comes down to. And if you think about it, we gave them those presumptions, okay? It's our own fault. We've done this to ourselves. And the way we've done it is we ran down and got that Social Security number. We ran down and got that driver's license. We ran down, and so many people have done it that they can just automatically assume or presume that you're one of the sheeple that's gone down and done it. And so now it's to the point that if you want to assert your rights, then you gotta take away their right to presume. They know that you're the king, and so all you have to do is say the words. But you got to do it before they see you on the radar. Once they see you on the radar, once they make their presumption, then if you haven't done something to defeat that presumption, then sorry, but you're it's too late. Okay, even at common law, I can show you court cases to say that even at common law, if you have something that you can plead that's material to your case and you don't do it at the proper time, you lose the opportunity for that case. And so you have to do it in advance, long before they ever see you. And so that's what I do is, usually what I'll do is if I know I'm going to a certain state, in a week or a couple months or a month or something, then I'll start noticing them now. I'll start sending stuff out to them now and telling them, hey, you don't have any more authority over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop, and I just go down the list. And I don't ever have a problem, quite frankly. My public servants are very good, in my opinion. Now, I won't say that I don't have to do something sometimes. A good example is the Pennsylvania Attorney General. I sent one of my notices to the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and one of his hired thugs sent me back a letter saying that if you travel in Pennsylvania without a driver's license, we're going to arrest your butt and we're going to take you down and put you in jail. And so he went and sent me back with his letter that he sent me, with him signed it and everything like that, and they sent me back my document that I sent them with their received stamps all over it. And I put all that together with an affidavit of criminal complaint for perjury of oath and treason and sedition and all sorts of stuff that are multiple felonies. And I sent it to the U.S. Attorney. And the U.S. Attorney sent me back a letter saying we've referred this to the FBI. And now about 2 or 3 months later, I went to go on the Attorney General's website. That's the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and they had an acting Attorney General there. Okay, so I got his butt removed, and I guarantee you the next one gets read the riot act about that stuff. And the same thing happened with the Ohio Public Safety Commissioner, and you know, so I can't tell you I can't tell you how many people I've had removed by doing this stuff. Former U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales resigned suddenly 2 weeks after I filed a criminal complaint against him with the U.S. Supreme Court as part of a writ of certiorari that I was filing with the U.S. Supreme Court. 2 weeks later, he's out of there. He says he's hiring attorneys to defend himself in the Department of Justice. Same thing happened with Mark Everson, IRS Commissioner. I filed a criminal complaint against him, and George Bush had him out on the White House lawn, and he was saying it's the toughest job in the country. But anyways, the point is I can't tell you how many people. I mean, there's like 3 U.S. attorneys in Texas, 3 U.S. attorneys in Arizona. You know, I mean, it just goes on and on. The first time I did this, I was actually in a lawsuit. I filed a lawsuit in Arizona, and the lawsuit was against the chief judge of the Supreme Court, the Arizona Attorney General, a county sheriff, a chief of police, and police officers. Anyway, so what happened is, as with any lawsuit, it's like throwing mud against the wall, and so you just name anybody and everybody that you can, and so that's another reason I use my notices, because I go and invite them, okay, and I send them a notice. If I'm being attacked by the local city police, okay, I'll be sending out notices to the chief of police. I'll be also sending out notices to the chief judge. I'll be sending out notices to the chief prosecutor, and I'll be sending out notices to the chief judge of the Supreme Court, and I'll be sending out notices to the Attorney General, okay? So I'm inviting all of those guys, okay? Inviting you all to the party here, and tell them that you got a bunch of criminals operating in the city, and this is what they're doing, and all the rest of it. You see what I'm saying? And then when I file a lawsuit, I just name them all. And so anyways, what happened is this assistant attorney general responded for the attorney general and the chief judge of the Supreme Court in this lawsuit. And the assistant attorney general, I told him in my lawsuit, I told him I'm not a person, I'm not a plaintiff, I'm a petitioner. If you look up the word petitioner in the law dictionary, a petitioner is not a person, it's one who does something, okay? And the reason is that goes back to the petition of right in Old England, that a petition of right, because of the Magna Carta, you can petition the government for, and even in the I think it's the first article and amendment, it talks about petitioning the government for redress of grievances. Okay, so you're not a person if you're a petitioner. So I always do a petition. Anyways, so what happened is I tell them I'm not a person. I'm not one of your low-life scumbag U.S. citizens. I just go down the list. And in my lawsuit, and this assistant attorney general, and I was at this time I was mad. Okay, there's all sorts of stuff coming at me. It was like a feeding frenzy at me. I had the IRS I was having to deal with. They were stealing my house, and they were this other town was trying to charge me with disturbing the peace because I arrested the auctioneer. And so there was all this stuff going on at the same time, and so I was really frustrated and upset. And so this assistant attorney general came into this lawsuit. The first paperwork she filed in there, she essentially said, because what I did was I had sent a notice to the chief of police. They issued a warrant, okay, for their straw man, and they actually came to my work looking for me. And so I took a week's vacation. I filed this lawsuit, and I sent a registered letter to the chief judge of the Supreme Court, and I ordered her to quash that warrant. And I said, quote, because we all know that corporate commercial agents, the police in brackets, are too stupid to tell the difference between a sovereign living soul and a straw man vessel, unquote. And I said, furthermore, Chief Judge, I filed this lawsuit, you're named in it, this is the case number, and you're going to get served with it soon enough. And if you fail to quash the warrant for the arrest of the straw man vessel, it'll be further proof of your dereliction of duty to regulate your subordinates. And I was just like really mad at this point. And so anyways, she quashed the warrant because I never, ever saw the cops. I went to work after that, and nobody ever came looking for me. Anyway, so what happened is now the lawsuit's going on, right? And this assistant attorney general responds, and she says, in the first paperwork, she says that it's perfectly appropriate that I petition the chief judge to get the warrant quashed. And then she starts calling me plaintiff and all this other stuff. And so I immediately filed a criminal complaint against her for perjury of oath, treason, sedition, because she accused me of being a person. And the next paper, the very next paper she filed into that case, she filed a notice saying that she'd been transferred to another department and somebody else was taking over the case. And that really shocked me. And if you, I got to tell you, what you essentially have to do is you lay a foundation, and once you lay that foundation and start, and if they violate your rights, you just file a criminal complaint. And if you bring up the right issues and you laid the proper foundation, I mean, they're history. I'm telling you, they'll be lucky if they're not in jail. And your public servants will take care of it for you. And so we really do have good public servants. The problem is because we're ignorant of the law. That's really what it comes down to. It's our own ignorance of the law. And if we lay the proper foundation and put them in the position where they can no longer presume, all the stuff that they're presuming, then you can go after them and they will take care of it for you. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. I have a website. You can reach my website at www.sovereigntyinternational.info. That's all one word, sovereigntyinternational.info. I also have a couple groups, a Yahoo group and a Google group, and I also got a Facebook group, but it's the Facebook group I really don't do much on, except I use it to publicize things like this event. But there's about 5,000 members on it. On the Yahoo group and the Google groups are private. The Facebook group is an open group, okay? The Yahoo group and the Google groups are both private, okay? So unless you're a member, you can get access to the stuff that's in there. And they're called Administrating Your Public Servants. Both of them are called Administrating Your Public Servants. I've uploaded a bunch of files with criminal complaints that I've done, that I've gotten people removed with. And my notice and demands, I'm also available. I get emails on those groups all the time. And you can you have to join if you want to find anything out about them. But they're available. Yes.
I would like, if you could, for you to send me that link. I have your other two links up, but if you could send me the Sovereign link to your website through your regular Skype chat, I'll go ahead and post it in the room.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm just typing the link into my computer right now. So anyways, this is what you do. If you lay a proper foundation, then you're the king. Okay, they know you're the king. But what's happening is that right now they can presume you're in a contract, and until you assert yourself, until you say the words, "I'm the king," and you don't have any more authority over you, then you're either the king or you're a slave. Okay, a U.S. citizen's a slave. Okay, I can show you in their court cases where a U.S. citizen is a slave. And so if you go around saying I'm a U.S. citizen, that's like saying, "Yeah, I'm a slave. Go ahead and abuse me all you want, because I don't have any rights." And that's exactly what that's all about, okay? Don't get me going. But anyways, I'm just going to check this link here real quick, and it looks pretty good, so I'm going to send it off. And the point is that if you know who you are, if you truly know who you are, you're the king, okay? And you cannot just talk the talk. This is one thing that really gets me is these people that think they can do commerce, okay? There's a Clearfield doctrine, okay, which is Clearfield versus United States, Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, which is a court case, Supreme Court case, and it basically talks about laches, okay, and those who are asleep on their rights. If you're asleep on your rights, then if you don't assert your rights, you lose them, okay, and that's essentially what that says, and they will not provide you a remedy, and remember, you have to go to the courts to get a remedy, they will not give you a remedy if you're asleep at the wheel on your rights. If you aren't asserting your rights, then you lose them, and that's all. That's just the bottom line. But beyond that, also, and that's what this is talking about. Okay, and so you have to assert your rights, and if you don't, then you cannot go to the courts and expect them to give you a remedy, because they won't. And if you can't get one from the courts, then I don't know where you're going to get one from. And if you go into commerce, you give up your rights. Okay? You know, that's one of the things that the FBI and the Texas State Police were asking me about. They asked me about bonds and all of this stuff, and I told them, I says, you know, I don't do any of that stuff. I said, you know, in my opinion, that's you know, you're the people that do that stuff are they know a little bit about it to know that there is such a thing as a sovereign, but they don't know enough about it to stay out of commerce, because once you go into commerce, then you lose your sovereignty, and you're a slave. Because all you have to do is look in the Uniform Commercial Code, okay? In the Uniform Commercial Code, it talks about persons. Everywhere through there, it talks about persons. If a person does this, if a person does that. Well, there you go, okay? A U.S. citizen is a person, okay? If you're a person, you're a slave, and they can do literally anything they want. And so if you go into commerce, then you're a slave. And that's all there is to it. And I can show you court cases that talk about that all day long, even statutes that talk about it. So all you have to do is stay out of their contracts, and I don't care who you are, everybody is the king or the queen. And all you have to do is stay out of their, what they view to be contracts. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have the common law right of contracting, because a common law contract is not commerce. And that's another thing that a lot of people are confused about.
I wanted to ask you if you could elaborate on that, the differences between the two.
Well, another word or another terminology for commerce is private international law, okay? And private international law it's private law, and it's international. And it's basically the law the bankster thieves use, okay? And so because the government's bankrupt, then they are now fall under that private international law, commerce, and that's where martial law comes from too. It all comes from the Vatican, actually. But so as long as you stay away from stuff involving the bankster thieves, then it's pretty safe. Now, so therefore you can use their IOUs, okay, because Federal Reserve notes are IOUs, and you can go and buy gas on the corner gas station, and that's not commerce, okay? That's just a private contract, and the evidence of that is you give them the IOUs, and they give you the gas. But getting any of their so-called loans, okay, if you get a loan, then that's commercial for sure. And anything dealing with the banks, okay, any kind of loan or mortgage, you know, that's all Roman law. And you start getting into Roman law, and as far as that, now it doesn't mean that you're turning yourself into a slave for everything, but as far as that particular issue is concerned, you're a slave. And now, fortunately, the government has seen fit to make sure that your downside is limited. In other words, if you don't make a mortgage payment, you know, they can steal your house. And they might be able to sue you depending on what state you're in. Some states they can sue you for the difference if they lose money on it. Some states they can't. But so it's limited as to how much they can hurt you, because the government knows you're sovereign. They all know you're sovereign. But you know what's happened is because the government's bankrupt. When you go out and get a driver's license and all of that, they're in commerce, then all of that stuff is commercial, okay? If their law says that all persons have to do this, so then they're talking about commercial entities, okay? That's what a U.S. citizen is a commercial entity, okay? It's a cesticate trust. And so anything that you do that is involving that U.S. citizen, if a Social Security number is involved, okay, or a U.S. citizen, then that's commercial, okay? Now, you can open bank accounts without Social Security numbers. I open them up. It's not easy. The bankster thieves give you a hard time about it all the time because they want to access that account. And so But my attitude is I don't have a Social Security number. I went to the Supreme Court, and I told them when I was in the Supreme Court the first time that I swear, a matter of fact, I was suing the IRS because the IRS was stealing my money. And I told the Supreme Court, I give them an affidavit, I swear under penalty of perjury, I don't have a Social Security number. I have never had a Social Security number. No problem, because it's not you, okay? It's a separate entity. That's why they spell the name in all block capital letters. It's a trust. And so once you understand that, you know, I don't have a Social Security number, and I can look somebody in the eye and tell them that, because I don't. And I'm not going to produce one, and I'll just go somewhere else, or I'll sue them. You know, which way would you like it? Because it's also a felony to compel the disclosure of a Social Security number, and if it's a government bureaucrat, I'll build a case against them and file a criminal complaint against them. And, you know, so again, you have to understand the law and know what to do. As long as you're not doing anything with Social Security numbers or doing anything that's considered their color of law, what I do is I make up my own identification and record it at the county recorder's office, and that's the only ID I ever show any government bureaucrat, and they accept it. It's no problem. I explain to them that the idea that I have is verified by an officer of the court. I'll tell them, here it is right here, and I'll tell them, here it's a government document. It says right here it's a government document, and I said right here it's verified by an officer of the court, and here it's a certified copy, and here it's a apostille for international commerce. And they'll take it, and they usually say, is there a birth date on here? And then I'll say, well, I have no first-hand knowledge of a date of birth, so I can't possibly say what that is, and that's hearsay evidence and inadmissible as evidence in a court of law. And I never hear another word about that. Anyways, so once you understand the law and you start pointing it out to them, you know, I never really get any difficulties over this stuff. The only time I ever get into difficulties is if I produce a U.S. passport. I never, ever produce a driver's license unless I want to rent a car. I do have the straw man's driver's license, and the only time I ever bring it out is if I want to rent a car, because they won't rent me a car unless I pull one out. You know, if I want to rent a car, I travel quite a bit, so I need to rent a car from time to time, so that's when I pull it out. But otherwise, I leave it at home. I don't even carry it with me. And I send out my letters that I don't have a driver's license. I don't. My straw man has one, but not me. They don't ask for my straw man's driver's license. So, anyways, and that's the way I proceed, and I get along just fine. And if you know, I send out here I'm in Delaware. I send out letters to chief of police, chief judges, attorney general. Delaware's not a very big state, so there's not a lot of people to send it to, and so that's kind of useful. And I already, you know, a couple of years ago did Maryland stuff when I was living in the New York area. So, anyways, you know, that's essentially what I do, and you know, how I proceed. Is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions or anything?
Well, yeah, I have a question. If someone were listening to you right now, and they said, I understand exactly what this guy is saying, he's making sense, so the first thing I'm going to do is, what would be their first step in breaking the contract line, the chain between them and commerce? What would they have to do? What would be the first step that they should take, and how would they go about that?
You know, and that is a very good question. You know, what happens, if you think about it, is they've got these little fish hooks into you, and there's a whole bunch of them, and you have to just pull one of them out at a time. And so right now you're involved in all these issues that the courts view to be contracts, and so you need to start getting away from that stuff. Number one is I would go and get a bank account without a Social Security number. Tell them you don't have one. If you can, you know, it's a lot easier if you can get a foreign passport, because then you can just go there and say, well, I'm from out of town. I'm here visiting. I just need to open a bank account. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. You know, tell them whatever. And another thing is I never, ever, ever give out where I live. Okay, I never, ever, ever give that out. And so I have a private mailbox. I always use a private mailbox, and that is very useful, because if you have some bureaucrats coming after you for one reason or another, it buys you time. okay, to administrate them, to get them removed, or to put them in a position that they don't want to talk to you anymore. And so I never, ever, ever tell them where I'm living. And so you might want to get yourself a private mailbox. Most of these private mailboxes, there's a notary there that will notarize documents for you, and that's also very useful, and they'll do things for you. Now, when you get a private mailbox, they might want to see some ID, and so that's why I get a passport, okay, a U.S. passport or a passport of some sort, and the reason a passport is useful is it doesn't have an address on it. And when you get that passport, don't give out a social security number. I mean, I don't care what the application form says. You know, when I was my son, I've gotten passports, lots of them with those social security numbers. My son, he goes into the post office and he says, my dad says I don't have to give out my social security number. Well, you know, shoot his mouth off or what? Eh? So, anyways, I went in there. And I said, you know, it's a felony to compel a disclosure of a social security number, and I know you don't want to go there. And that's when the postal court, well, first of all, the postal court says, oh, we always get a social security number. And then I said, well, you know, it's a felony to compel a disclosure of a social security number, and I know you don't want to go there. And that's when he changed his tune. He says, oh, well, we can process it, but I can't guarantee what will happen. And I says, yeah, you bet you'll process it, and it's none of your business what happens. And so they processed it, and 2 weeks later, my son had his passport, and it was no problem. And so, yes, they're gonna moan and complain, but you have to have your ducks in a row, and you have to be willing to stand up for yourself.
And you have to understand that a lot of the bureaucrats that you are going up against, like the postal clerks and everything, they are not up on the law. They only go by color of law, what they're told. They don't look at the statutes and acts to see that they're not legal or lawful. You know, they don't do the homework. They're just paid by the hour to be there to man the counter, you know, to sell stamps or postage or whatever. So you would have to be really prepared and know your stuff before you went up against these people, right?
Yes, absolutely, and you're 100% right. And but you know, it doesn't take a lot of things to know to counter these people, and that's the one reason I like it, because I don't need to know all their little codes, rules, and regulations. All I need to know is the ones that tell me that I'm not applicable to whatever it is I want to do. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And
yes.
so it's Title 42, United States Code, Section 408, talks about it being a felony to compel a disclosure of a Social Security number. And all of that stuff is available on those groups, by the way, all those statutes. Anyways, so, you know, and then also you bring up the act, well, there is no Social Security Act. The Social Security Act is not positive law, and therefore there is no Social Security Act. So you're going to violate my rights under the color of law. That's a felony under Title 42 or Title 18, United States Code 241 and 242. And so you start bringing that stuff up, and I guarantee you that they're going to decide they want to talk to someone else. I can't tell you how many times I've had bureaucrats say, you know what, I'm late for dinner. Have a nice day.
Right, because they don't get paid for that. You know, it's supposed to go smoothly, or they're supposed to be the ones saying no, can't do that. They don't understand when it's put toward them. You know, they don't know how to react.
That's right. And so what happens is, they're used to people just caving in and doing whatever they want them to do. And if you come across to them in a respectful sort of way, but assertive, then all of a sudden things change. And you know, you just have to stand up for yourself. Banks are especially difficult to open bank accounts. That's another thing I would do is gradually get away from any bank account that has a Social Security number associated with it, and open bank accounts without Social Security numbers. Voters registration, you got to revoke that. Okay, you swear under penalty of perjury that you're a U.S. citizen when you register to vote. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're a slave, and so you have to revoke that. And believe me, it's no problem. I haven't heard of anybody ever having any problem revoking their voters registration. Matter of fact, you just send them a letter, I'm not a U.S. citizen. And the courts have said you can be a citizen of Delaware or a citizen of Maryland or a citizen of New York without being a U.S. citizen. Matter of fact, a U.S. citizen is a citizen of the District of Columbia is what a U.S. citizen is. And the United States is the District of Columbia, Guam, American Samoa, Puerto Rico. That's what United States is. United States is not Delaware. United States is not Texas. Okay, those are separate states. And most people don't have any idea how that works. All you have to do is look in the United States Code, and it says that. And once you understand that, you're not in the United States. Okay, I'm in Delaware right now. I'm not in the United States. The United States is over there. It's 10 square miles over there between Virginia and Maryland. And I have never been in the United States. I may be in the United States of America, but I'm not in the United States. And two separate entities. And once you understand that, start pointing it out to them. And it takes time. Okay, this stuff has to sink in. It's not something you don't just wake up in the morning. Oh, I'm the king. Oh, I feel so much better now. It doesn't work that way. It takes time. It has to. What do the scriptures tell you? It's line upon line, precept upon precept. Here a little, there a little. It takes time for it to come to you. The first time when this was brought to me, it was back in the early 1990s, and I've worked in aviation all my life. I mean, I started working on airplanes in 1976, and I've been working for 35 years. I've been working on airplanes. And aviation is highly regulated by the government. There isn't anything that goes on in aviation that isn't regulated somehow. And so I deal with law and regulations all day, every day. And I know how the law works. And this guy comes up to me and he says, he starts talking about these two classes of citizens. And I told him, I says, you're nuts. You don't know what you're talking about. And then he brought out these court cases. And I thought, wow. If this is true, this is just the most fantastic thing there is. And I had to investigate it. And the more I investigated it, the more I found out that he's 100% correct. And so, anyways, so don't expect yourself to get it, okay? Just think about it. Give it, I can't help but think of a scripture where it says, if you don't believe it, just give it some thought. Want to believe it, and it will come to you. The law is very abstract, okay? You can't touch it, you can't feel it, but you can see the effect of it everywhere. So it's very abstract, and it's hard to get some of the concepts. And even now, I have to think about things, for weeks or months even sometimes before I really formulate my ideas around something. And so it's not a simple thing, and you have to think about it. And what these courts are saying, these judges, they lay awake at night trying to make these decisions to make a proper ruling without really coming out and saying things. And so a lot of times it's not what they say, it's what they don't say. And so again, a lot of these, so you have to read these rulings and then think about them for a while, think about what they're saying, and let it sink in. And anyways, it takes time, and you got to give yourself time sometimes for it to sink in.
Right.
But these ideas of getting a private mailbox and getting a bank account without a social security number and all of these things are just basic, fundamental things that you should be doing for your own privacy anyways, regardless of whether you believe in what I'm talking about or not. It's none of their business, a social security number. It's none of their business about where you live, and even on the straw man's driver's license, okay, on these driver's license application forms. You think about that. You sit there and you swear under penalty of perjury that your address is your physical address. They want to know your physical address and your mailing address. Well, but think about it. Who were they talking to? Who can they see? There's a Supreme Court case that says that the only thing the government can deal with is a corporation. They cannot deal with living souls. They can only see corporations. That's Penhallow versus Doan's Administrators talks about that. And so I guess what my point is that I don't care what they're saying on their application form for their driver's license. The physical address, this corporation can still live in a mailbox. I don't care. And I'm prepared to say that under the penalty of perjury, no problem. And I've never had a problem either. Never, ever had a problem. And so, but again, you have to come to terms with it. You have to be prepared to stand up and say, yes, this is the truth, and argue with them over it if you have to. Go ahead.
I have another question from the chat. This is from Tasha, and she says, how about the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment? Can he talk about that a little?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a book that I got a hold of that I sent Tasha, and thanks for bringing that up, because that's a very good point. Again, it comes down to this non-positive law. Okay, if you remember, I was saying at the beginning, you're talking about Office of Law Revision Council, okay, for the federal, where you go there, it's a U.S. Congress website, and they'll tell you what statutes are enacted as positive law. And then if you look up positive law in a law dictionary, positive law is law that was properly enacted, okay? And there's court cases that say that the public law books, okay, take precedence over the codes. Okay, in other words, when they enact a law properly enacted, it'll go into one of the public law books, public law, whatever they call them, 27-642 or something like this, and those are where all the positive laws go. Okay, it's a United States public law. Anyways, what happens is that if it's not positive law, then it doesn't go in there. And so if you think about it, okay, this is, again, is something you have to think about. If it's not positive law, then it's not a law, okay? It never got signed for one reason or another. They didn't follow their procedures. So it's a fictitious law. It's an imitation law. Matter of fact, there's a court ruling that talks about it. It's color of law, something that looks like law, acts like law, but it's not, okay? And in fact, it's what it means is it's a contract. And if you get involved into it, you agree to it because you didn't have to. And the same thing with the 14th Amendment, okay? The 14th Amendment, what happened is everything turned upside down with the Civil War, okay? First of all, the major mistake was the South when they walked out of Congress, okay, because Congress ceased to exist at that point. And everything's been under executive authority ever since. And if you understand, Lincoln was the first one that started issuing executive orders. And so everything's been under executive authority ever since. It's been under martial law. And that's what this book called The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment talks about. It's written by this guy, this judge, H. Ellett, at the Utah Supreme Court, and he is in this case called Diet versus Turner, and so he is explaining the law, and and that's essentially what this book says. Is it goes through and explains how we've been under martial law ever since the Civil War in varying degrees. And there's lots of court citations and stuff like that talk about it. So once you understand that, but martial law is voluntary, okay? Martial law is in the United States. In other words, the United States, remember, is 10 square miles over there between Virginia and Maryland, okay? And so that's where the martial law is. It's not here in Delaware, unless you agree to it, okay? Because, again, it's whether you're in the United States, and that's in all of what you tell them, okay? Here's from the United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1993, volume 33, okay? Quote, "It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933, 48 Stat 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. HJR 192, 73rd Session in Congress in session, June 5th, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolve the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of the United States government officers and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only.
This is why we have the big ruse with Congress saying we're going to audit the Fed and nothing ever happens, because it can't happen. They don't have the real authority, do they?
You know, it's hard to say. I think that they do have the authority to audit the Fed. The Fed is a private company, there's no doubt about that, but it does have special license to exist from the government, and that's called the Federal Reserve Act. And so I think that if they exist by the government, then the government can dissolve them, and so they can say, well, we want to audit you. But, you know, by the same token, Congress is, full of crooks, and so I think it's still a ruse because they're just putting on a show for people to get people to calm down a little bit about, you know, some things. To divert their attention off of other things. So at any rate, there's all of this stuff that's going on. Let me read you some of this stuff about martial law. First of all, you know the War of Independence was fought over martial law too. Matter of fact, the Magna Carta was fought over martial law. This is not the first time this has been happening. This goes back to the Vatican again, okay? And the War of Independence and the causes and necessities for taking up arms, 1775. It says, statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice-admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the courts of common law, and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. Okay? That's what the War of Independence was fought over. I don't care, you know, the media and the idiots out there want you to think it's over taxation without representation. That has nothing to do with it. And then in the Declaration of Independence, okay, it says, he is affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. Well, gee, that sounds like martial law. He is combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Gee, that sounds like martial law. And pretended legislation, think about that. That's a law that wasn't properly enacted. And so that's color of law. And so for imposing taxes on us without our consent, you know, taxes have to be voluntary. For protecting them by a mock trial. Okay, again, that's martial law. I mean, what do you see that stuff going on today in the courts? Absolutely. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. Martial law. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. Martial law. I mean, how many times do they have to say it? Here, in this non-ratification of the 14th Amendment, it says, Congress, claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions, imposed martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result was an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction to Congress, but where is the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, the Legal Tender Acts, the 14th Amendment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's taken from this non-ratification of the 14th Amendment. Here's another quote taken from that. The 14th Amendment is an extension of the national military powers presently used in the municipal character and enforced by municipal laws stretched far beyond their original limitations and enforced by Article 1 tribunals. Okay? Well, if you understand anything about any court that you see today, okay, they're all tribunals. Okay? Every court, unless it's a real common law court, and even jury trials are all tribunals, and the reason I say that is because the judge is up there and he's telling the jury what to do and he's giving the jury instructions, and if the jury doesn't follow his instructions, then he'll put the jury in jail. Especially federal courts are all tribunals. And then here's one from a U.S. Supreme Court case from 1852. It says, next to revenue, quote, in brackets, taxes itself, delayed extensions of the jurisdiction of the Admiralty are our greatest grievance. The American courts of Admiralty seem to be forming by degrees into a system that is to overturn our Constitution and to deprive us of our best inheritance, the laws of the land. Okay, the laws of the land is common law. And it goes on to say, it would be thought in England a dangerous innovation if the trial of any matter on land was given to the Admiralty, unquote. And so, here's another one. This is U.S. Senate Report 93-549, dated November 19th, 1973, and quote, in March 9th, 1933, the United States since March 9th, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency, unquote. So, I mean, do you think anything's changed?
No.
Absolutely not. What's that?
I said, no, nothing's changed.
Absolutely.
Now
there's...
Say that I was driving down the road, didn't have a driver's license, but I was pulled over by an officer who approached my car, and it wasn't registered, and I had no driver's license, and I told him this. What would be is that what I tell him, or he comes up to my car and he's wanting my driver's license and my registration? What do I say? I say, I have no business with you. I have no contract with you.
Well, that's a good question. Excuse me. First of all, I go ahead and register the vehicle. And the reason is because if you do this properly, okay, you can, what I do, I tell them, okay, in my paperwork is I don't care whose plates are on my vehicle, it's my vehicle. And I'll have private vehicle in the rear bumper area in large letters, clear and unmistakable letters in the rear bumper area, and I'm the king, right? And it's treason for them to get me in a contract by which I give up my sovereignty. And so therefore, I tell them, so even though the vehicle's registered, and technically when you register the vehicle, you gave it to the state and they're letting you use it, okay? And even though it's registered, I tell them that I'm taking it back, essentially. And they have agreed with me because they're the ones that told me I'm listed as sovereign in their system. And it's useful to have it registered. The reason is that mine in Texas that told me, and this hasn't happened to me, okay, but this friend of mine in Texas told me that a cop came up to him and said, quote, "Why is my computer telling me to leave you alone?" And that's what it's probably saying about me. Because when the FBI and the Texas State Police came to see me in Texas, the day before I was speeding on the freeway, and I was passing this guy. I was in the slow lane. The other guy was in the fast lane, right? And I was passing this guy, and we came over this rise. I was doing about 80 in a 65. And we came over this rise, and there was a highway patroller. Well, I'd already noticed everybody and their brother in Texas. And so what happened is the cop came after us. I took my foot off the gas and let the thing slow down. I never hit the brake. And the cop stopped the guy that I was passing. And so my truck has a fifth wheel receiver in the back, and I was staying in my travel trailer about a mile from there at an RV park. And so I'm sure the FBI, when they came to see me, they told me it was just completely by accident that they found me. And they told me that that, but they wouldn't tell me how. And I am absolutely positive that the reason they found me is because they saw that receiver in the back of my truck, and the cop, when he pulled up, his computer, basically told him that they want to talk to me, right? So he just drove to the nearest RV park and found where I was at, and then the next day the FBI and the Texas State Police are out to visit with me. So I'm positive that's what happened. So the point is that if you administrate them properly, okay, they will see you and they will turn and run the other direction. They won't want to have anything to do with you. And now that's within limitations, okay? If you murder somebody, if they see you committing a felony, then they do have a right to arrest you, okay? That's the one time that they do have a lawful right to do that. So, but as long as you're not hurting anybody and going about your own business, then they'll just leave you alone. And I think that they put it in their computer system to basically leave this guy alone, because you set him up for a lawsuit, is what you do. You set him up for like big time lawsuit, big time jail time. It's a felony to violate somebody's rights under the color of law, and that's what they do, and they can't claim ignorance anymore. And so that's why they put you in the system as do not mess with this guy, because it's a felony, and they would be convicted.
Well,
and go ahead.
We have a caller, 573. Are you there?
Glenn?
Hello?
Yes.
573.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, just one thing. The questions are not loud enough that we can hear them. If Glenn could repeat the questions after they're asked so we can hear them, it would help a lot.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I can hear well on the phone, but not on the internet.
Oh, okay. I'll see if I can correct that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you. So, anyways, it's been my experience that if you do this properly, if you follow this procedure properly, you have to essentially go on the attack. You have to take away their presumptions. You got to do everything you can. I've spent literally tens of thousands of dollars doing this stuff, and you have to do everything you can to make sure that they cannot claim any plausible deniability. And then if they violate your rights, then you got them, and they'll turn you into a millionaire. But my attitude is that, and this is what I tell them is that, I just as soon not have to come after you. I'd rather that you continue to do the job you're doing, because I appreciate the work you do. It'll be better for everybody if you just decide that maybe this is not the one you want to mess with today. But so, anyways,
I have another question.
Okay.
And to those who said that I was being a little low, let me know if it's a little bit better now. I'm actually going to turn it up a little bit here. Okay, now the question is from the chat, from Tasha. She says, is it fair to say the UN is the head corporation for the Vatican? And you'll want to repeat that question. Hold on, we've got someone else coming on. Whoops, they hung up. Okay. Caller, if you, we seem to have dropped a call. If you'll call back in, we will add you to the board. But anyway, the question was, is it fair to say that the UN is the head corporation for the Vatican?
They're all corporate commercial entities, and the Vatican, it all comes from the Vatican. Now, whether the UN is owned and operated by the Vatican, I don't know. But I can tell you that just about every government on the planet is owned and operated by the Vatican. The Eagle, and this is something, there's a guy by the name of Tupper Saucy that wrote a book called Rulers of Evil, and it's about the Jesuits, actually. Anyways, in that book, he says, he's dead now, but in that book he says that the eagle is a symbol of the Vatican. And if you remember, Hitler, the Nazis in Germany had the eagle as one of their symbols. And so I find it quite interesting. There's a lot of stuff that you see that's very interesting. And when you start noticing this kind of stuff. One thing I can say is that the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, I believe the World Bank is owned and operated by the Vatican. The International Monetary Fund is an agency of the World Bank, and the Internal Revenue Service is an agency of the International Monetary Fund. And I believe the Treasury is now owned and operated by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, the U.S. Treasury.
There's more of the U.S. Treasury in the administration, isn't there, than there is in the Federal Reserve? I know I'm being funny, but it seems like there's really no difference now between corporate and administration, government administration. They're all the same people.
Well, administration and corporate is basically the same thing. That's true. Matter of fact, it's only a fairly recent phenomenon when they started calling themselves administration. Because administration is definitely has to do with corporations and that
right.
kind of
They
stuff.
Administer for the corporations.
Exactly. Yep. And so, really, if you think about it, we the people, if we the people delegate our authority to the government, there's actually court cases that say that there's nothing the government can do to affect the people. So if you put yourself in the position of being the people, then you should never ever have any dealings with the government, and that would be the way it's supposed to be, unless you wanted to, like get involved with the government somehow, like for example a government contract or something like that. But other than that. They shouldn't be looking you up for anything. Matter of fact, that's one of my little battles that I'm engaged in right now is customs and at the border and stuff like that. I'm fighting with them over some stuff, and because I get tired of being harassed. But so, anyways, that's one of my little things that I'm doing right now.
Well, I did want to ask you a question too. The sheriff is supposed to be the law of your local jurisdictions, right? Above any federal agency or whatever. They take an oath and to uphold the Constitution. And there is a movement going on right now that the sheriffs are banding together. It has to do, I think, with oath keepers and the military. I think they've got a movement going on. Do you think that the sheriffs that are in this country, in the different states, do you think that they have the ability and the power to bring back common law and keep out the overreaching bureaucratic monstrosity that has become this government, the federal government?
There's no doubt in my mind. Matter of fact, in some counties they've done that. There's a story about Catron County, New Mexico, that's got like 6,000 people in it, and they had problems with the U.S. Forest Service and all sorts of government bureaucrats doing this and that. And there's actually several counties that I've heard about recently, but this Catron County, New Mexico, is the one that rings the bell the most, and where they went and passed the Constitution as a county statute. And then they told all of the government officials, federal officials in particular, that if they wanted to do anything in their county, they had to come to the county sheriff to get permission. And when they started balking about it, they said, "That's okay, we'll just convene a grand jury right now and bring an indictment against you." And then all of a sudden, they had no problem at all.
Yeah, and why aren't more sheriffs in more counties standing up and taking that stand?
A lot of it, I think, is that they're all educated by the feds. And so the feds teach them what they want them to know, but they don't teach them everything. We're all products of the government's educational system, and they've taught us what we need to know to operate in their system, but they haven't taught us everything. And so, the burden really is on people, we the people, to educate our county sheriff about what his responsibilities are, and that we demand that he uphold his oath of office and that kind of stuff. And if we have to get a few of them removed, then they'll get the message. You see what I'm saying? But
right,
until
because they're the only elected law enforcement or peacekeepers that there are, right? The sheriffs
in the county,
right?
That's true.
So we have that power. If we don't like what they're doing, we can get them out of there.
That's true, but whether we're quote unquote U.S. citizens, because if they're elected, it's only U.S. citizens that are electing county sheriffs.
That's true.
But so again, this would be something where you use your notice. Okay, you start serving the sheriff with your notice, notice like the ones that I send out, and telling them you don't have any more authority over me than a Walmart rent-a-cop. And here's some court cases you might want to take a look at. You see what I'm saying? And if enough people do that, that's the way you're going to get them to rein them in. And the same thing with the feds too. Quite frankly, I mean, that's really where it comes down to. It comes down to we the people.
Oh, I have a wonderful question now for you. How about the situation with Obama not showing up for Georgia court and still winning? Then Georgia gets $8.3 billion federal grant. Imagine that. Isn't that preposterous that could possibly happen, that you could have someone in contempt of court just more or less say, I'm not coming, so what? And make out like the bandit?
Yeah, quite frankly, my attitude about Obama is that, again, I'm the king, and there's nothing that he can do that can affect me, and it's only slaves that he has an effect over, and that they're slaves, then they don't have any choice. That's all commercial. You have to understand that's all commercial. I mean, they paid him off. There was a commercial transaction, obviously.
Right. It really lets us know. It really lets us know where common law stands in this country, as far as this government and these state governments are concerned. They don't seem like they want to recognize it. That they would rather go with the federal government. And I think it's because of the nice little pocket change they get, the neat little toys that the police departments and the prison systems get, and now the prison system being privatized. I mean, there's more money to be made from this corrupt federal government than there is to be made from common law as far as these greedy crooks are concerned.
There's no doubt about it. But again, if you establish yourself as the sovereign, there's nothing the government can do that can affect you. And so, we the people, I mean, it just comes down to the fact that we the people are asleep at the wheel, and we the people need to wake up and start accepting responsibility and start taking action. And until that happens, it's going to continue. And that's really what it comes down to, is that you have D.C. is a foreign corporation. Okay, I live in Texas, and I'm currently traveling in Delaware, and the United States is a foreign corporation that has nothing to do with me. But at some point, they'll probably be rounding people like me up too. When they're under martial law, when they're really wanting to do whatever they want to do, military dictatorship and all the rest of it, they'll be coming looking for me too. And so really, that's one reason that I do the stuff that I do, because the more people that know about this stuff, the more people that start waking up about everything that's going on, then the less power they have. The power they have is an illusion. They don't have any authority. And but again, it comes down to we the people. We the people have to stand up and say enough. And that's the only way it's going to stop. We the people need to, everything's under martial law, and we the people, that's really the crux of the whole thing, is it's under martial law. And we the people need to stand up and say enough and put an end to this martial law. And quite frankly, that's one of the, I'm preparing a letter right now that I'm going to do, and let me read you one of these paragraphs here that I got in this letter. And it says here, and it's to about every member of the U.S. Supreme Court it's to Obama, it's to Biden, the Vice President, it's to the Speaker of the House and the House Minority Leader. It's also to the Senate Majority Leader and the Minority Leader. So there's some congressmen, there's a bunch of judges and stuff like that. Anyways, it says here, and whereas unless you do everything you can to correct the issues described herein, each of you criminals and all accomplices to the crimes described herein, and because I have served this upon you by registered mail, which is proof of service because registered mail is kept under lock and key and the postal office keeps a chain of custody for each item, therefore none of you can claim any plausible deniability, and you're all witnesses against each other, and I intend to bring each and every one of you to justice unless you can show that you did everything humanly possible to correct these issues, and I'm looking forward to seeing each of you do that little dance they do at the end of the common law rope. And I believe the day will come when that's what we'll see. And,
Yeah, we can hope so.
Well, I'm convinced that that's what's going to happen for sure. Matter of fact, there's a lot of reasons that I don't want to talk about here, but it always comes to an end. It always comes to an end. And at some point, the people have had enough, and they stand up and say enough, and usually it gets violent, and they start rounding people up and start who knows what, but they'll probably be hangings. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was hangings, and people like the ringleaders in Congress. I'd like to see them all hung for sure. Because Congress is where it's really coming from.
Pelosi and her little quip about we can't read the bill until we pass it statement, to Congress. When I heard that, I saw her lips move. I heard the words come out of her mouth. My jaw just dropped. And I said, surely they're going to boot her out for that. They're going to ridicule her for that. No, they just went ahead and passed the law, and then they didn't even read it.
Yeah, and so therefore it's called law. It's not positive law.
It wasn't debated.
But still, the bottom line though is that if they didn't read it, then it's not positive law, and so therefore it's not a law. Okay, it means nothing. That's the bottom line. But the burden's on you.
So she more or less helped us out there.
Well, whether she did it on purpose or not, they know the law. I guarantee you they know the law. And if it wasn't read, then it is not positive law, and it will be listed on the Office of Law Revision Counsel's website as a non-positive law statute. And so then there's court cases to say that when the code and the public law conflicts, the public law always takes precedence. And so, therefore, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. But the burden's on you to bring up that issue. And that's one of the issues that I'm bringing up in this letter. This letter is like 25 pages long, 28. And that's one of the issues is that they're using this positive law to enslave everybody, or this non-positive law to enslave everybody. So that's one of the issues that I'm bringing up. But you got to understand the burden's on you. If some bureaucrat comes up to you and wants you to do something under that statute, you tell them, well, there's no Income Tax Act, there's no Customs Act, you don't have any authority. So get out of my face. That's right. Show me the law.
Yep. And if they can't show you the law, right? If they can't show you the law, there is no law.
Well, then they're criminals, aren't they? And then you arrest them, and you put them on trial. You do a private prosecution, but I guarantee if you start threatening that you're going to arrest them, everything will change.
Oh yeah, and I think that we should be prepared for those people who want to do this, who want to take back your sovereignty and live under the law of the land that we were meant to live under. I think it takes a lot of courage and a lot of stamina, because you're going to have a fight against you. They're not going to give up easy. but you do have the law, the common law, the law of the land on your side, which is greater than anything that they can propose. And all you have to do is stand strong and know what you're talking about. That's why it's very, very important. I'm going to ask you to give your website out one more time, and I'm going to post the link in the room. It's very, very important for people to become educated into how to interact when you have to deal with these people, to take yourself out of the trap that they've laid for you, the contract law that they sucker you in with. And the only way to do that is to read the information that is important, that deals with the laws, that deals with the color of law, that explains to you so that you can understand the difference between the two, so that you can have an effective argument. So I want you to give out that website again, because a lot of us, including me, and I live on the edge of society. There are times when I do have to go and interact in the commerce, but for the most part, I live outside of it. And but I still have that birth certificate, and I still have that Social Security number. Even though I don't use it, I still have it. So I need to know exactly what I'm doing when I do these things, because you can make it easy on yourself as far as you being educated and knowing the right and the wrong of it, or you can stumble through it in the dark. It's much better to be prepared and take the time needed to get into the materials, to read, to understand, instead of just, what you're saying gives me hope and understanding that I can do this. And so I'm kind of excited, and but I need to kind of stifle my excitement and get educated before I make that first step. So
yes,
go ahead.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, go ahead and give your website, and I'm going to post it in the room again.
Okay, it's www.sovereigntyinternational.info. That's all one word, sovereigntyinternational.info. And you're right. I cannot be there. I cannot assert your rights, okay? Only you can assert your rights. I cannot do it for you. And I cannot be there when the cop stops you on the side of the road. And so, I can be available on the internet, but by then, chances are it's too late. He's already, got your, see, the real key is to, you can have that birth certificate if you don't ever use the thing, okay? Don't ever bring that thing out. You can have that driver's license. I mean, I bring it out if I have to rent a car, but otherwise I never bring it out, and I don't even carry it with me. I have this photo ID affidavit that I made up, that I use, and it works just fine. And so you can have all that stuff as long as you don't bring it out. And quite frankly, I don't ever, again, it's not you. Okay, the Social Security number is not your number. You have to understand that. And the driver's license is not your driver's license. It's got a name spelled in all block capital letters. That's a fictitious entity. At common law, a proper name is never spelled in all block capital letters. So that's a fictitious entity. It's not you. And that's what you have to understand. And so you have to understand that and think about it and be prepared to deal with that. So anyways, the website again is www.sovereigntyinternational.info. All one word, sovereigntyinternational.info. And if you do this procedure properly, okay, chances are they're not even going to want to talk to you. Okay, and chances are you're not going to have any problems. But if you do, again, you're going to have to deal with it. And that's why I have my homemade ID that I made up and that I use, and it works just fine. You can, but you have to, like when you're dealing with the IRS thieves. there's always the potential. I mean, if one of the reasons that they want a social security number on that bank account is because then the IRS thieves can come and steal it, and they know they got the right one. And so I've been in battles. I took the IRS to the Supreme Court twice, and I had thousands of dollars in my bank accounts and never had a problem. So I've heard of people that have had bank accounts seized that didn't have Social Security numbers, but I tend to wonder what else was going on. But again, I always respond. If they send me something, I respond. Now, the last time they sent me something, I went and I wrote on the outside, or first of all, I opened the envelope and I took a photocopy of it, and then I closed it back up. It was a request to file. And I closed it back up, and then I sealed it again, and I wrote on the front, no such person at this address, return sender, and I made a photocopy of that, and I attached it all to a criminal complaint, and I sent it to the U.S. Attorney General. And the criminal complaint was for perjury of oath, treason, sedition, et cetera, et cetera. And I haven't heard anything back from since. And again, you have to know what to do. And if you answer them commercially, which a lot of people recommend, well, hey, you're a good customer. They're going to want to come back and communicate with you some more. And so I mean, I don't go into commerce, and I won't say I don't go in there because I do have a loan on my truck. But you got to understand that as far as that loan's concerned, you better make the payments or they're going to steal your truck. And so as far as that particular issue is concerned, you're a slave. And so I'm not. I've tried some of this commercial remedies, and I found that I haven't found any of them that work. And so I've done commercial liens. I did a $500 million commercial lien against J.P. Morgan Chase Bank and all of the executive officers. That's like about 35 members of the board of directors and executive officers. And I got a $500 million commercial lien against them. And I got a $500 million commercial lien against a company called Wilshire Credit Corporation. And, but the point is that I've never been able to collect on those things. If I really wanted to, I could go and find some property to seize and do that kind of stuff. But my agenda really is good government. And so what I'm really interested in and what has really worked is going after my public servants, is sending them out my notice, and if they do anything but grovel, okay? If they even look at me wrong, I file a criminal complaint against them, and the next thing you know, the guy's gone. And so that's my attitude, is that I want good government.
Okay, I have another question. And how do you feel about the accepted for value method, and would you say that is engaging in commerce?
Yes, actually, because you're saying they're coming to you with some sort of a bill, and you're accepting it for value. In other words, you're saying that you can use access to straw man's account. You're definitely, that's in commerce, and I don't go there. I mean, that's one thing I completely stay away from. I know people that make up what do they call them? They make them up. I can't think of the terminology right now, but they basically take the bill and turn it into a money order. That's what they make it into, and send it back to the company, and it works. It pays the thing off, but it's very technical, and you have to do it right. And I just don't want to go there. I don't want to acknowledge that Social Security number is mine. Okay, it's not. It's not mine. I want nothing to do with it. It's created by fraud. It's nothing but thieves, and I want absolutely nothing to do with it. And so I just stay away from it. And even if I have to, like my loan on my truck, obviously I had to produce the Social Security number for that. Well, I signed by. Okay, I don't accept responsibility for that thing. I signed by, and so that's by the authorized representative, obviously. And so, but that's the only time I go into commerce is for something like that, where I pretty well have to. for a loan on my truck. I bought a new truck, and but I got my travel trailers paid cash for. I paid over $20,000 for my travel trailer. I just paid cash for that thing, and so I try and pay cash as much as I can, and that's the way I do it, and I get along just fine. But the more you go into commerce, the more they get these hooks into you, and it turns you into a slave, is what it does.
Right, and I agree that if you have to battle against them in order to prove you're not part of them, then it seems like you've defeated your purpose. That you need to state clearly and emphatically before anything takes place that you are not a straw man, that you do not have contract with them, and therefore do not enter into any of their discussions concerning it, because it has nothing to do with you. You keep it simple. You keep it. You keep to the common law. Nothing else matters. Don't go into court under their terms, right? You go into court under your terms, or not go into court, but you do what you have to do under your terms, not their terms.
Yeah, exactly. And if I do go into court, it's under my terms. In other words, if I see something going down, then I'll file a lawsuit against them before they have a chance to file charges. You see what I'm saying? And I'll just start dumping on them. I'll just dump all sorts of stuff all over them. And that's worked pretty good too. Again, it's warfare, and so the best defense is a good offense, right?
Exactly. And I seen a video on YouTube of a sovereign going into court, and the judge got up and walked out. He left the courtroom.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I think that was in Canada, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was amazing. You could see this judge could not get out of that courtroom fast enough.
If again, and I don't know what this guy did to lay as a foundation, because in my opinion, if you lay the proper foundation, then they'll see it coming and they'll know what they have to do. Because again, if you're the king, you're the king. And especially in Canada, there's statutes that have been passed like there's one statute that says that you can't be convicted by the de facto power, and it's all de facto. And matter of fact, there's a guy I know that in Canada that actually said to the court, he was in on a traffic court offense, and he said to the judge, he said they asked him, are you this person? And he says, I'll answer any questions you have as soon as you answer one question for me. And the judge said, what is it? And he says, is this a de facto court? And the judge says, get him out of here. So,
right, we don't want him educating the other people in here. We won't get any revenue that way.
That's right. It's all about the revenue, so you can. It's all in understanding the law. I mean, and you don't have to. The nice thing about doing it the way I do it is that you don't have to understand all of it. You just have to understand a little bit, enough to know that it doesn't mean anything to you, basically. And there's all sorts of, reasons why that's the case. In the U.S., the issue of positive law versus non-positive law, any transportation code is non-positive law. And so that means all of these codes for speeds and all this other stuff, none of that stuff is positive law.
It seems that the call has been dropped. Hello.
Hello.
I'm here. I got cut off.
Yeah, we got dropped. We have a caller.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Would you go ahead with your question?
All right, Glenn. Thank you for taking my call.
Sorry about that. We had a little tech issue. Skype dropped us there for a second.
That's okay. You've used that. You talked about using BY colon. I had a court paper where the deputy clerk signed her name with BY colon, but wouldn't tell me about anything about it. Can you explain that just a little bit? Why they would do that, or why we should do it?
Run that by me once more. You're kind of hard to understand.
All right. You talked about using BY colon when you signed your name.
Oh, right. By. Right. Okay. And what about it?
Can you explain that? I had a paper from the court clerk, and the deputy used that BY when she signed her name, and I didn't know why.
Well, that's because, again, if you look at the court clerk, it's by the deputy clerk for the court clerk. So that's what by is for, because you're signing as the authorized representative. When you sign by, you're not responsible for anything.
You're not.
Yeah, that's right. When you sign by, you're not responsible for anything. You're signing as the authorized representative.
If you signed a traffic ticket that way, it would be the same thing?
Well, you could, but in order to get the traffic ticket, you have to produce a driver's license, and so they're going to have that down, and you're going to have to make that argument,
No,
and it's better not to make it.
I got a traffic ticket because I didn't have a license.
Well, again, that's because they can presume, okay? It's all under martial law, and they have the right to presume certain things, and their presumption is that you're a person. And so, because you didn't defeat their presumption. And so, if you signed it by, well, then what I would do is probably send a registered letter to the court. How long to your court case, to your hearing?
A month.
So you got lots of time. I would send it by registered mail to the judge, call him up and ask him who the name of the judge is. There's probably a phone number on there. Call him up and ask him who the name of the judge is and the proper address to mail it to. Tell him you have to serve him with a document. And the prosecutor. Serve it on the prosecutor, too. Matter of fact, you could even, instead of serving it on him by registered mail, you could probably make up your document and take it down to the court and make yourself a couple copies and then file the original into the case and get the court to stamp your 2 copies and then go and serve the prosecutor with one of the copies, and you might even be able to get them to accept service. If not, then you just make up an affidavit of service and file that into the case too. Again, if you bring up the right argument.
Is there a danger that they might issue a bench warrant?
I'm sorry?
Is there a danger that they might issue a bench warrant?
I heard about the bench warrant part. If you what? What was the first part?
Can they possibly issue a bench warrant if I didn't show?
Oh, yeah, I would say that they could, and so that's why you want to deal with it somehow. So you need to deal with it as soon as possible. I don't know where you're at, but most places in the U.S., you could probably go in and talk to the judge in person even, and deal with it. But you need to serve them with a document that basically says that you're not a person and your law is not positive law, and go down the list.
Okay.
And serve it on them. And then give them a few days to think about it, and then go in there and talk to them and tell them that you want it dismissed.
And would you sign that BY colon?
No. In that case, I wouldn't sign a BY colon because you're signing it as a living soul. And that's what I tell them is I'm a living soul, I'm a sovereign, you have no authority over me, I'm not required to have a driver's license, it's only your corporate entities that are required to have a driver's license. You see what I'm saying? So you have to know when to sign that.
Something like you do your emails.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's when you have to know when to use BY colon when you're in commerce. They're trying to drag you in commerce, and so you didn't defeat their presumptions, and so you don't want to sign it by. Matter of fact, I did that in one of my early court cases. Matter of fact, I did all sorts of things. I was in this court case, and I was signing my signature under penalty of perjury, and then I'd say all rights reserved, no assured value, no liability, I essentially took my signature off the page and made it, and the judge kept coming back saying, your writings are unintelligible to me. And I never got it until like after the case was dismissed. But yeah, when you're in court, you need to accept responsibility. You need to make it as powerful as you can.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, and I have another question. Is there a difference between dismissed and discharged?
Discharged it's a commercial term. So, debts are discharged.
Okay.
Court cases are dismissed.
Okay, there you go then. Are there any other areas outside of having to deal with letting the courts know and everyone know that you are not in contract with them? Anything that you need to do, say you're a landowner and you want to keep the tax collectors and such, are there avenues for us to employ in that area to keep them off the land that is duly owned?
Well, that has to do with different states have different laws, and so I would be approaching it. You need to find out. You need to get into your state laws and stuff like that. I know some states have a affidavit of property value, and if you have already done an affidavit of property value, then you basically told them the issue is that Federal Reserve notes are IOUs, okay? And so if you pay for land with an IOU, then it's not paid for, and it sets up a usufruct. And a usufruct is under Roman law, and you didn't pay for it, and so you're basically the taxes you're paying are an annual rent because you don't own the land. And so the way that different states are going to have different ways of dealing with that. For example, in Texas, there's a statute that says that in order to be taxed on any kind of tax, that the property has to be rendered for taxation. And so what you do in Texas is you bring up that issue, and I know several people that have done it. I've done it. And all of a sudden, they're not harassing you about property taxes anymore. Now, in Arizona, they have an affidavit of property value, and that works really good too. Because what I do when I record the deed is I serve it on them by registered mail, and I have court cases that say that once you file something with the clerk, it doesn't matter whether they stamp it or anything. Once you give it to them, it's filed. Okay, and so when I serve it on by registered mail, I have proof that they got it, and so then what they do is they'll send it back with an affidavit of property value, and the letter will say, we put this in a special file until you fill out this affidavit of property value. Well, that's perfect. That's the non-tax-paying file. Because I never ever submit that affidavit of property value, and they've never ever sent me a bill for property taxes, and yet they know that the land has been transferred. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yes.
So that works perfect too. And I know New York has a affidavit of property value as well. So different states have different statutes that you have to do a little bit of research and figure out, how to get around that. But I can tell you that once you do that affidavit of property value, then you're telling them that you paid IOUs for your land and that you're subject to these taxes, and then they'll steal it if you don't pay the taxes. The only solution then is to transfer it, sell it to a structure or something like that, and then not do the affidavit of property value. But that's the best I can say. You can bring forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent. I always do that anyways, but that doesn't seem to slow them down.
What if you actually have the actual land patent.
Well, they shouldn't be. If you were someone that was granted land by the government.
Yeah, my ancestors were granted 6,000 acres that they stole. I have the actual documents, the patents. They are derived from Spanish land grants.
So I'd be surprised. They're probably not even talking to you about taxes, are they, or are they?
They took the land. They killed my family. They put some of them in an institution for the criminally insane, and a bank was formed, and the people who stole the land built the bank, Citizens Bank and Trust Company from Louisiana, and they, along with the state and the oil companies, went and took our land just like they did all my other tribal families down there.
Wow.
You know that Louisiana is Napoleonic law, right?
Yes. But that's if you understand what that is, that's civil law. That goes to martial law. But the land is still common law. They go and say that's that changes things, but in my opinion, it's not. Matter of fact, if you read in their statutes, the statutes are all the same. And that's just an excuse to get people to think that they can do things that they can't.
Right. I've got the documents with the department, the seal from the Department of the Interior, and with President McKinley's signature. I actually have the documents. My family's had them in their possession. We've been fighting this ever since they took it, and we'll continue to fight. But yeah, it just goes to show, though, that if the law will not be upheld by those who are supposed to uphold the law, that you have got to realize that you have got to become sovereign. You have got to take yourself out of the quagmire. You have got to make your own freedom, your own liberties.
Yes, absolutely, and I am not familiar with your particular situation, and I think there's probably a remedy there somewhere. But the question is where? Did anybody sign anything allowing them to take all this stuff?
No, it was taken by fraud, and we see this is something that we're still fighting. My cousin and I are still fighting it, and actually we are just about ready to bring it into the courts. We have all the documentation of fraud. That's why I can name names and name bankers and all of this stuff, because we have the proof, and I dare any of them to come up and challenge me on it. I would love that. But
so was it mortgaged or anything like that? There was no mortgage on it either?
There was never a mortgage on it. It was sovereign land. It was my family along with other. We were not treaty signers, okay? And so my people were living in South Louisiana when the Spanish came in, and the Spanish did not want to leave Louisiana without having somebody there to guard their, quote, forts and everything. So they told the Indians down there, they said, hey, we're going to make sure that you have this land forever and ever and ever. And so they gave us the Spanish land grants. And then when the U.S. Got control of Louisiana and the Louisiana Purchase, they honored those grants because they have to. Those are king's titles. They cannot be usurped by any law anywhere, international or whatever.
Right. That's powerful stuff.
Right, and we still own every bit of it.
Yeah, but they've stolen it from you then.
Yeah, they stole it, yeah. But
well, I'd be bringing that into court as quick as you can.
Well, Louisiana is so corrupt, and I can say this because my family's had to deal with this for generations upon generations, and they have not, the old people that were in power would not allow it to get to the courts. But now there's a new breed of people coming up with a conscience that are seeing what has happened down there, and they're actually taking up the mantle and helping us fight. So now we do have someone on our side who has the ability to get it there and to get the truth out. So I think things are going to be, I think things are going to open up here shortly.
Yeah, but I mean, so you've been damaged pretty bad, and yeah. Well, I would. I mean, you definitely bring that. I think. Yeah. It's hard to say, but definitely proceed on that for sure.
Oh yeah, we won't give up. We haven't, and there's not many of us left. There's in my family, but I have children, and my cousin has children, and we'll continue to fight no matter what. It's not about anything else other than those people are going to know that they did not and could not take from us what was not theirs to take. So.
Yeah, they're criminals. There's lots of criminals out there, that's for sure.
Right, and the thing of it is that we were fortunate enough to understand what was taken from us, but there are many people who never understood that their land was taken, and they didn't have the right. And today, the people who are being pushed out of their homes, these mortgage foreclosures and all of these things, these people, they need to stand strong. They need to start asking for proof. They need to, the burden of proof should not weigh on the individual. The burden of proof should weigh on the monster that brings the damage. And that's what the banking industry has done and has always done. It has caused damage. It's the only people that will, or organization that gets away with saying, give me your money so I can use it for investments, and I'm going to charge you for giving me your money. That's what the banks do. They say, come bring me your money, and I'm going to charge you so that you can store your money with me, and I'm going to use it for investments or whatever I want, but I'm not going to give you any of the excess that I make off of it. I'm just going to charge your account every time you do something with it. And to me, that's ludicrous. Why wouldn't I keep my money at home where there wouldn't be any charge and I can use it whenever I want, and you can't take it and spend it for me on things that I have no benefit from? But that's the way the whole system runs,
Yeah, they're a bunch of thieves. I mean, I think everybody's figuring that out these days.
Yeah.
And that's why I call them the bankster thieves, because, that's what they are.
I agree. And you know what, Glenn? We are out of time. Your 2 hours went. And
yes, I just noticed that.
A brilliant show. Brilliant. And I'm sorry to take up the last few minutes with me going off, on my little thing here about my family and stuff. But it's just, it's when you mention patent law, I always jump on that because I want people to understand that there is such a thing as patent law, even though no one practices it today. In fact, if you try to find a legal representative that understands patent law, forget it. It's just not taught anymore because there is no more patents. And but one thing that I'd like to say at this point is that if you're sovereign, you cannot have an attorney because an attorney represents you, and what it comes down to is that it makes you incompetent, and you cannot be a sovereign and incompetent. Okay, so you cannot have an attorney. That's one thing that's very important. Right. And we have people who says, very good show, and they can't wait to hear you again. And they can do that again next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, or 12 a.m. UK time. And thank you to all our listeners in the UK who stayed up with us tonight. We are very appreciative, and we hope that you enjoyed the show. Please tune in again next Sunday on These Changing Times Radio. And Glenn, I'll let you have the final words, and then we will see you again next Sunday.
All right, and thank you very much for the opportunity. And there's strength in numbers, and we need to. That's why I'm sharing this information, because no man is a mountain. We need each other, and ultimately we're going to win. We just don't know how we get there yet, but the Bible tells us that ultimately we win. And so we need to work together and share our information. I don't know everything, and so hopefully some people will come on that can give me some ideas too. and we all benefit from that. And thanks for having me, and we'll see you next week.
All righty, and good night, everybody. We'll close out with Payday Monsanto. Kiss your liberties goodbye.